How's it hanging, everybody? Today we're talking about FANTASIAN Neo Dimension, and it's coming out in just a few days, and I'm very excited to hear about the reviews, the kind of impressions that people have of this game, because it will be the first time that people, like a massive audience, will have access to this game, because for so long it's been trapped on Apple Arcade. So now, as we can see, it's coming to the Nintendo Switch, it's coming to PlayStation 5, Xbox, and Steam. That's a lot of coverage. So that's a lot of exposure. It's a lot of access that people will have to this title. It's $50, which I think is very reasonable for this particular game, especially since it's not a brand new effort. They've definitely done some things to, voice acting and things like this to kind of like fix the game up some. But that's neither here nor there. What we're talking about today is what I think is probably the best aspect of this game. And that's saying a lot because the game has many good things going on. But my favorite part about FANTASIAN would have to be this right here. That is the soundtrack of FANTASIAN. This is the CD soundtrack. It's like 3 discs. I'm very grateful that I have this because for such a long time, it was impossible to own any kind of physical media of FANTASIAN, except for this. This soundtrack is the only thing you could get. And I'm pretty sure it's still out there. You can go grab it. It's also, the soundtrack is also conveniently on like Spotify, Apple Music, and stuff like that. And I'm gonna go ahead and say what I need to say in this video. And that is that the FANTASIAN soundtrack is my personal favorite video game soundtrack of all time. Now, I personally am a huge music buff. I've had very intense music hobbies throughout my entire life. I'm not going to get into all the details, but I'm somebody that is very passionate about music. I take it very seriously, and this soundtrack to me is just a 10 out of 10. It just does everything perfectly, and it accompanies the game and the experience that you're having perfectly as well. I think that any good soundtrack, or especially for like a video game, it follows the game wherever the game goes. So I think that most any good video game soundtrack is kind of going to be all over the place, because the game is going to be, if it's a good game, the game's going to kind of be all over the place. And there's going to be all these different settings and scenarios and events and locations in the game. And the soundtrack has to go all those different places with the player. So there has to be sonic expressions for, like a grand ball and, a big epic battle or in space, or, town themes and boss themes and battle themes and everywhere in between. The game's got to follow you all those different places and through all those different events. And FANTASIAN definitely does that. So it's all over the place. There are jazz songs. There are kind of like lots of classical music. I mean, that's kind of the backbone of the album. There's even like this weird song that's like kind of like Zydeco meets polka or something. It's just, it has those silly moments in the game. Those are soundtracked really well. But really, let me get to the core of what this soundtrack is. So this at its core is a very sort of technological futurism kind of album that leans really heavily into like 90s new age motifs and ambient music, and plenty of classical as well. I mean, it is classical music when you really break it down, like so much soundtrack music is, but it just has this super pristine, super crystalline, like kind of cheesy, if I'm being honest, like 90s new age angle that I personally really love. If that sounds like something you wouldn't be into, you might not be into it. But it basically, Final Fantasy VII, I think, is the biggest reference point. The original Final Fantasy VII soundtrack, which is all of those things I just said. It is very 90s. It is very new age. It's all over the place. You know, there's chocobo themes and there's, crazy, emotional moment themes and all kinds of different sonic thoughts in the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack. And that's exactly what we've got going on here, just with a more modern sound palette, I think. But, Nobuo Uematsu, who is the composer here, he made all the music for, or not all the music, but so much of the music for the Final Fantasy series and for Final Fantasy VII in particular. And you can really hear that DNA here. And I've said this before, Fantasian is basically a Final Fantasy game, just without chocobos and Moogles. But if you really look at what they're trying to do here, this is like a throwback Final Fantasy game to the first, 7 or 8 games, especially, that kind of like golden era of like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 maybe. That's where this game gets most of its reference points, I would say. And you can just look at the visuals here. I mean, it looks like if this were to me, this is the real Final Fantasy 16. Final Fantasy 16 is, I haven't played it. I'm sure it's a great game. I'm sure it's a cool action, Devil May Cry-like game. But this is a Final Fantasy game. This has turn-based battles. This has the Final Fantasy creator. This has the Final Fantasy original soundtrack artist. This is, to me, Final Fantasy. Throw some chocobos and Moogles in there, and you finish the job. But it's interestingly, now that this game is under Square Enix, because originally it was not under Square Enix, but now that it's under Square Enix, now they can lean a little more into those Final Fantasy isms. And they've actually announced that this game, you're going to be able to swap out like the battle music with Final Fantasy music, like from all over the series. I don't know how I feel about that exactly. Not because it's not appropriate, but because Fantasian just doesn't need any help. This game is about as good as it gets. And I hope I've done a good job of selling you on the idea of checking this soundtrack out and really just checking the game out. Because I do believe that, of all the good things this game has going on, the soundtrack, in my opinion, really is the best. It really is a 10 out of 10. I think if you're somebody that likes these kind of new epic soundtracks from games like maybe a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, or maybe Xenoblade, or maybe the Trails series, maybe the Ease series, whatever tickles your fancy. If you are an aficionado of the music in this genre, then I think you absolutely owe it to yourself to experience this, because it is really that good. It's really that good. Anyway, I'm rambling at this point. Thanks for checking me out. Let me really quickly say that I have not made very many videos this calendar year, and I really had intended to make more, but I'll be very honest with you. I've just been playing a lot of games. I've just been playing a lot of video games, but now that the year is coming to a close, I can't wait to talk to you guys a little more. I'm planning a video just going over my top RPGs of the year. I'm going to talk about the games that I missed, the games that I played through in my backlog, and we're going to look forward into 2025, all the new and up and coming releases coming out, and what I'm prioritizing personally. So anyway, guys, that's all I got for this one. Thanks for checking me out as always.